Shame. Understanding the role of shame. Where does it come from? Where does it go? Where does it stay stuck? Do we all have some amount of shame? And the answer would be yes, every single one of us. Because if you look at how we raise children, when they do not know how to walk or when they do not know how to speak, they look very cute when they fumble, when they fall, and that wobbly walk. We all laugh. Or when they say a word and they don't say it right, we find it very cute and we laugh because we, of course, find it funny. Of course, our intention is not to shame, our intention is not to blame, our intention is not to mock. But what happens internally with the child? I am not able to do something, I don't know something yet, but everybody around me is enjoying it. Everybody around me is laughing. So either I have to clown because I am feeling something inside which doesn't sit right because I'm not able to do something. So either I keep doing it more often because okay, everybody is happy with this, or I feel that no, I have to push harder and I have to prove. It can go in move in either directions internally for the child. Now every single one of us without exception, are raised this way, not because we had horrible parents, but because that's how our parenting culture is, that's how our education system is, especially now with the school, the 10th and the 12th results coming. I get to see so many children who have internalized the shame because of the marks they have got, and so many children who have got the good marks feeling so proud because of the marks they've got, associating their worth to that. Even schools associating their worth to the marks that the children, parents associating that worth. This is a cycle, and I have done it too. So it's not like I am immune to all this. This has happened. But today I'm talking specifically about what happens if professionals who are in the field of health and who are supposed to work with the bodies or the minds of both, if they have internalized shame and they are refusing to acknowledge it or even work in it, there is a risk of passing it on to their clients or whoever they are working with. And I experienced that, and I have been on both sides as a professional, certainly passing on the shame which I had internalized. And when do we internalize it? Most often as young professionals, uh, when we want to really make a difference in the client's life or whoever we are supporting, and we don't see that kind of progress that we want to, or we don't see the kind of investment we bring in, and it doesn't seem for us that they are doing that same investment, it can anger us. It can feel that what is wrong with them. It can become anger in us. But where does this anger come from? It starts with, what am I not getting right? I don't know why they are not doing it. So that I don't know can gently shift to us saying, I wanted this particular movement or change in my client or who I am supporting. It could be a child, it could be a parent, it could be anybody that we are in a position of hierarchy as a professional trying to support. And what if they are not progressing in the way we intended to? What happens to us? We could start questioning, what is it? What am I doing wrong? Something is going wrong here. Am I doing enough? Am I a bad professional? Am I a stupid psychologist or any other health professional? We start going back to being that same little child who was once questioning, did I not do enough? Should I try harder? What should I do? We get stuck exactly like how our clients are also getting stuck. This becomes more dangerous if we do not slow down internally and sit with it and saying, this is not our shame, but we are missing seeing something on the other side. We are missing some context there. We need to get curious about what is probably happening there and not make it about us. But if we have not worked on our internal shame, the way we speak to clients will start changing. We can either start withdrawing, saying, oh, this is stupid client, this is so boring work, or this is just a waste of my time, or we can, because we do not know what to do with it. So instead of accepting that we are the ones who lack the knowledge, we are the ones who lack the skill, and we are the ones probably who need support, we don't acknowledge any of that because that brings us shame and blame internally, right? Not knowing something, not having the skill, and needing support for ourselves brings shame and blame. So we will not acknowledge any of this, and we will say they don't know how to do it. They don't like the skill. They're just sitting and whining. They don't want to do the work. They're just cribbing. They're just talking. Talking was all just a waste of time. So we try to move the other in the same sense of urgency that we want to move from our own lack of knowledge, lack of skill, and lack of support. And this becomes very dangerous when it becomes a professional client relationship. And I remember now more conscious about it. So it's not like I have not done it and I'm still might be doing it, but each time I can recognize when it happens internally. I need to recognize, that is the first thing. Recognize that, okay, this is happening to me. Acknowledge that, yes, this happened to me. Maybe I have pushed. Check with the client, did I do it? Or if the client is giving a feedback saying, hey, this words that you said, or this facial expressions, or this tone made me feel this, accept it, because that is their feeling. And if a client cannot share this openly with the professional because they are scared of the professional, because of the hierarchy that we have established with the helper and the one who's getting the help in a top down approach already, we are in the same cycle of shame. We are just recreating the same cycle. We're not doing anything to break it. So I had this recent conversation with one of the health professionals. I was working with one as a client and also equally as a professional, where both had to be stopped abruptly because the professional refused to accept that they did not know, they did not have the skill, and they refused to seek the support. That so while it was very hurtful to see the person who I admire, who actually sits with a hell lot of knowledge and skill and ability to support others in that specific field that they work in. But unfortunately, when they don't do the internal work, it's very risky to refer them clients who might be going there with internalized shame. So things like, if you want to do the work, you do it. You take it or leave it. This is how I will work. So these things can make the client feel that, oh my God, I must be such a stupid client that if this professional is also giving up on me, my work is also so, even the professional gave up on me. So I am not even a good client here. Forget not being good at whatever else is feeling is what landed me in therapy or my work. And now there is a professional that giving up on me. So that can be, if we are causing more damage to somebody who finally showed up seeking help from us, we damage it and we say, that is it, I don't know how to work. So instead of saying, it will be nice, I think, for us professionals to say that I do not know. Accept our lack of knowledge, saying that I really do not know, and be apologetic, saying, yeah, this is happening to me. I need to do the work. This is my work. This is not your work, but that's my work. I have not done it yet. And then you say, refer them to somebody else, not a problem, and say that I am still working on the skill. Yes, I am faltering. Yes, I know my words have come up. And then you say, would you like to? Can we take a pause? If at least we can engage in conversation and stay there and get curious, that is great. It's perfectly fine for professionals to inadvertently say these statements, pushing, getting into a sense of urgency to see the work happening. It has happened to me. I have got feedback also from clients saying, Seema, this was not okay. And then immediately I had to reflect, and that intense shame coming in with that feedback. And I'm recognizing that, yes, there I go, getting defensive, working on it. It's a hell of a lot of work. So when we work with clients, understand that we are also doing our internal work. So I fear now to see the number of professionals, particularly medical professionals mainly, who probably come from that diagnostic model of black and white, yes, no, right, wrong. They also do the same thing and dismissing it. As when I tried opening a conversation, though they started the conversation, suddenly got defensive and disappeared. Just disengaged from the conversation without even communicating that they're disengaging. Oh, I'm so too busy. Oh, this is also boring. And continuing to doing the same and authoritatively speaking about uh, areas which they have no knowledge about, no skill about, and not seeking support. So that was a very dangerous pattern. So I thought, okay, maybe I should speak up. So we all need to speak up. whenever we inadvertently shame or blame or use the same thing that happened to us and we are using the same thing on another, we're doing the same thing. Another one I see is usually between this neurodivergent and neurotypical. Now, the neurodivergent shaming the neurotypicals is the same thing. So, if the neurotypical is shaming and not understanding neurodivergence, what are we doing? We are recreating the same cycle over and over again. So, I think if each one of us can position ourselves saying that, what am I doing? Am I doing exactly what was done to me? So then what is the difference? So how can we break the cycle? One, seek help for yourself, r- engage in reflective practices, think of the context, not to accept that what was done to you was okay. No, you can say that is not okay, but then don't do the same thing because if what they did is not okay, what we are doing is also not okay. Right. So how can we not repeat the cycle? Hold space for these complexities, open up conversations. And if the other person is not willing for conversations, you can open up your own dialogue, which I'm doing now and will continue to do here. Create your own spaces to get your voice to be seen and heard if the other person disengages or, goes into the flight coping mechanism. So this is for each one of us. When we engage with children, yes, we will make mistakes. Of course, the internal shame will come up. All that we can do is sometimes repair. We will again do it. I could still do it. Just because I made this video doesn't mean I am on this pedestal who has done all the healing work. No, this is an ongoing process. So I will still do that maybe with my husband, with my children, with my clients. So can I go back and repair is what I think each of us need to do, and not to prevent and be so hyper vigilant that, oh my God, am I shaming somebody? Is this the word okay to say? No, that's not what we want to do. But if somebody is giving us a feedback, or if we have recognized ourselves that, okay, maybe this was not a right thing to say, reconnect, repair. So let's work on reconnection and repair if connection had faltered, if damage had already been done. And when somebody calls out that, yes, I was damaged, that's their experience. And we've got to believe it regardless of whether we intended it or not. None of us intend to cause the damage to the other persons, but it happens. Right. So the term that says hurt people, sometimes, yes, it is overgeneralized to justify, oh, this is why. So no, I'm not saying to understand and be empathetic to the abuser if you are the victim. No, but this is specifically for the professionals. When we are working with both the victim and the so-called abuser, then we need to first do our internal work. But if we are going to shame, then we are also becoming the abuser. And when we are called out for that and again we shame, then probably it's becoming very, very clearly defensive and inability to work, and that's very dangerous. So I hope at least professionals, each of us can reflect on this and take our work forward accordingly. Thank you.